and I was scrolling through my Snapchat as usual, when I noticed that something odd kept popping up on my friends from Georgia's stories. They were all posting things that said, "Watch how you treat people," or "Always be kind," or LLK, which, after some digging, I found out stood for Long Live K. Kay was a 13-year-old girl who had 3 older siblings, ran track, danced, loved to read, and loved to take selfies. But Kay was also a 13-year-old girl who was being bullied. So much so that on October 17, 2017, she took her own life. The entire town, along with myself, was immediately hit with immense sadness. But I was also hit with questions. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking, how could something so terrible like this happen? Did no one in her life know that she was depressed or being bullied? Did they know but just write it off as typical middle school behavior? So I went to Google. And through Google, I actually found out a lot of interesting facts. For example, did you know that suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 15 to 34 in South Carolina? And it is the 10th leading cause of death for people of all ages in the US. Or did you know that in 2017, over 47,000 Americans died by suicide, but 1.4 million attempted suicide? So when Ms. Riley first came up in assembly and announced that we would be starting a new club called Public Policy and Social Change, I knew I had to join, and I knew I had to do my topic on suicide. Not just for Kay anymore, but for the 47,000 that died, and for the 1.4 million that attempted. Now this is where things start to get difficult. See, it was easy to talk about how terrible of an issue this is and how much it needs to be changed, but it wasn't as easy to come up with a solution. What could I, a 16-year-old girl at the time, do to help prevent all of these attempts from happening again? So I went back to Google to search for an answer to one of my original questions. Why couldn't Kay's death be prevented? Through this research, I realized that it wasn't that the people in her life were ignoring her cries for help, it was that they didn't even know she was crying for help. They didn't know that some of her actions and tendencies before her death were actually warning signs for suicide. A lot of people in America actually don't know the warning signs for suicide. I didn't know the warning signs for suicide before this project. So I decided that that would be my first step in trying to solve this massive issue: education. More specifically, educating people on what the warning signs of suicide are and what to do when you have someone who is displaying such signs. But Rome wasn't built in a day, so I decided to start this off on a small scale at first, by introducing it to Hammond. See, in South Carolina, there is actually already a law like this called the Jason Flatt Act. This act requires that all middle and high school teachers in South Carolina go through 2 hours of training in suicide awareness and prevention in order to renew their credentials. But because Hammond School is a private school, we do not have to abide by this law. However, it is something that we should abide by. So, with the help of my PPSC advisor, other faculty members, and the South Carolina Youth Suicide Prevention Initiative, also known as SciSpy, I decided to introduce this idea to Hammond. What was going to happen is that an official from SciSpy is going to come to Hammond and select a group of faculty members to form a crisis team. This crisis team is going to undergo training where they will learn about suicide awareness and prevention. Specifically, they will learn about the things that I mentioned before, among many other things. This is my official capstone project. However, honestly, my real goal is that even after I have graduated and gone off to college, that Hammond will continue to have an open conversation about suicide, and that we can branch this out and teach all of the teachers, as well as have seminars for students and parents in the future. So, with that being said, I would like to educate one last group, you all. First, I would like to start with risk factors. Risk factors are the characteristics of a person or their environment that make it more likely that this person will consider, attempt, or die by suicide. So there are many examples of risk factors, some of those being ongoing exposure to bullying, mental health conditions, recent death of a family member or close friends, or relationship problems. Next, I would like to talk about the warning signs of suicide. Now, I'm sure that most of you, if not all, know that the warning signs of suicide doesn't just have to be someone coming up to you directly and saying, I am thinking about suicide, or I am thinking about self-harm. It could be actually many different things. Some of those being possessing lethal means, self-harm, engaging in risky behaviors, giving things away, substance abuse, making suicide threats. If someone you know is displaying these signs among many others, this can potentially mean that this person is considering suicide, especially if they just started displaying them recently. Lastly, I would like to talk about what can be done to help protect people that are displaying signs like this. These are called protective factors, and they consist of, but are not limited to, parent connectedness, closeness to caring friends, neighborhood safety, and awareness of and access to local health services. So, in conclusion, I hope that my talk has educated you all on suicide awareness and prevention, but mostly I hope that it has encouraged you to have a more open conversation about this topic. So please, today, whether it's on your way home or when you're about to go to sleep tonight, sit down with a loved one and have an open conversation about suicide, mental health, or anything in between. Because in the words of Glenn Close, what mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, and more unashamed conversation. Thank you.